Welcome to the deep dive. We cut through the noise to get to the signal, and today we're looking at a story that's, well, very recent, very personal, but it also shines a light on a much bigger public health issue. We're talking about Justin Timberlake. He just revealed he's been battling Lyme disease. And this news dropped right as his huge The Forget Tomorrow World Tour finished up July 31st, 2025.
Right. And our mission today really is to unpack this. We want to understand, Timberlake's own journey, the challenges he faced, especially on tour, but also zoom out a bit, get the essential facts about Lyme disease itself. What are the symptoms? What causes it? What's the real impact? And importantly, look at how other public figures have shared their experiences too.
Exactly. So by the end of this deep dive, you'll have those key nuggets of knowledge, you'll be properly informed, maybe learn some surprising things, and definitely get some practical takeaways. Okay, let's unpack this. So July 31st, 2025, the tour ends. And boom, Justin Timberlake posts on Instagram, shares this Lyme disease diagnosis. He called it, and this really struck me, relentlessly debilitating, both mentally and physically. I mean, that's incredibly open, especially for someone constantly in the public eye.
It really is. And his reasons for sharing, they seem quite deliberate. He said he wanted to shed some light on what I've been up against behind the scenes. And also that he was trying to be more transparent about my struggles so that they aren't misinterpreted. Which makes sense given some of the criticism he faced. And he added that he hoped to help others experiencing this disease too. So there's that element of wanting to connect and support others.
Yeah, that transparency part feels important. And imagining performing with those symptoms.
Okay.
Wow, he talked about experiencing massive amount of nerve pain and just feeling crazy fatigue or sickness on stage. How do you even do a high-energy show like that night after night? It seems almost impossible.
Well, it clearly took a huge toll. And it definitely impacted the tour. Remember, this tour lasted over a year. Started April 2024, ended July 30th, 2025 in Istanbul. And during that time, there were canceled dates, postponed shows. Back then, the reasons given were things like bronchitis, laryngitis, back pain, even an ankle injury. Now, knowing about the Lyme disease, well, it puts all that into a much sharper and frankly more concerning context.
It really does. And it makes you rethink some of the public reaction he got, especially during the European leg, right? There were those reports, the social media clips, people saying he looked lackluster, low energy. I remember seeing that clip from the festival in Romania, Electric Castle, where it looked like he was getting the audience to sing a lot. People were questioning things.
And you can imagine the internal struggle he must have been going through. He actually described it as this really stark choice: stop touring or keep going and figure it out. And he decided to push through. He said, the joy that performing brings me far outweighs the fleeting stress my body was feeling. And he added he was so glad I kept going. That's some serious dedication.
Incredible resilience. And you have to think the support system was crucial. He mentioned his wife, Jessica Biel, and their sons, Silas and Finn. And even his NSYNC bandmate, Chris Kirkpatrick, praised him publicly, called him superhero status for doing the tour while battling Lyme. It just shows, doesn't it? You never know what people are dealing with behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which brings us to the disease itself, Lyme disease. It's fascinating and kind of sobering how common and impactful it can be. So what is it? Basically, it's a bacterial infection. The main culprit is a bacterium called Borrelia burgdorferi, and it's spread through the bite of infected black-legged ticks, deer ticks. But here's a key point. The tick usually needs to be attached for at least 24 hours to actually transmit the bacteria.
Okay, that 24-hour detail, that seems really important. Why is that the case exactly?
Yeah, it's critical. The bacteria, Borrelia burgdorferi, they actually live in the tick's gut initially. So they need that time, roughly 24 hours or more, to travel from the tick's gut up to its salivary glands. Only then can they be injected into the host, the person being bitten. So finding and removing a tick quickly, like within that first day, can often prevent infection entirely, even if the tick was carrying the bacteria.
Okay, that makes sense. So early removal is really your first line of defense. And if transmission does happen, what are those first signs people should watch out for?
Well, the early symptoms can show up pretty fast, sometimes just 3 days after the bite. The classic sign people know is that bullseye rash erythema migrans, technically.
Yeah.
It appears in maybe 70 to 80% of cases. So, importantly, not everyone gets it.
Right. Can't rely on just seeing the rash then.
Exactly. And the other early symptoms, they can really mimic the flu. Things like fever, headache, really extreme tiredness, fatigue, joint stiffness, muscle aches, maybe chills, swollen lymph nodes. This is why it sometimes gets called the great mimicker. It can look like a lot of other things early on.
Okay. And if it's missed, If it's not treated early, what happens then?
If it's not treated, it can progress to later stage Lyme disease, which can be much more serious. Though it's important to say not everyone experiences all these later symptoms. It varies a lot. But you can see things like facial paralysis, like Bell's palsy, significant brain fog, trouble concentrating, numbness in limbs, swollen joints, especially large joints like the knees, nerve damage causing pain, weakness, tingling. Yeah, it can even affect the heart, causing irregular heartbeats, dizziness, chest pain, palpitations, and neurological issues too. Inflammation of the brain and spinal cord leading to memory loss, confusion, plus arthritis, and sometimes depression tied to the chronic nature of it all.
That sounds incredibly wide-ranging, almost overwhelming. Do people usually get all of those severe symptoms together?
Thankfully, no, not usually all at once. The specific combination and severity of later stage symptoms can really differ from person to person. Some might primarily have joint issues, others more neurological problems or cardiac symptoms. It depends on individual factors and how long the infection goes untreated.
Okay, so with such a broad range of potential symptoms, how do doctors actually diagnose it, and how is it treated?
Well, the good news is, when caught early, most cases respond really well to antibiotics. Usually a 10 to 14-day course does the trick. Diagnosis typically involves looking at the symptoms, asking about possible tick exposure, like have you been in wooded areas recently, and then blood tests. Though the blood tests can sometimes be unreliable in the very early weeks of infection before the body builds up detectable antibodies.
Oh, okay.
Which again underlines why spotting those early symptoms and thinking about potential exposure is so critical for getting that early diagnosis and treatment.
Right. Now, I've definitely heard about people having symptoms that linger even after they've had the antibiotics. What's going on there?
Yeah, you're talking about post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, or PTLDS. For some people, maybe 10–20% by some estimates. Symptoms like fatigue, body aches, difficulty concentrating, that brain fog can persist for months, sometimes even years after the initial antibiotic treatment. The exact cause isn't fully understood. It's thought it might be related to residual damage or maybe an ongoing autoimmune response triggered by the initial infection, even after the bacteria are gone. But it's a very real and often very frustrating condition for those who experience it.
I can imagine. And geographically, where should people be most aware of Lyme disease risk?
It's the most common disease spread by vectors like ticks or mosquitoes in the United States. And reports suggest cases might be up this year, particularly in states like New York, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Traditionally, the highest risk areas are the Northeast and the Upper Midwest. And the riskiest time of year is generally late spring through the summer and into the fall. That's when the ticks are most active. And connecting this back, Timberlake's situation, while very public, is sadly not unique. When you look around, quite a few other well-known people have opened up about their own experiences with Lyme. It really underscores how this can affect anyone.
It's true. It's quite striking when you see the names, like Shania Twain, country music icon. She got bitten in Norfolk, Virginia, and she described getting so dizzy on stage she almost fell over. And then she developed dysphonia, which affects the vocal cords, right?
Yes, exactly. It affects the voice box muscles.
Right. And that seriously impacted her singing. She needed a lot of therapy, vocal training. She said it was like recovering from an injury. And then there's Avril Lavigne, diagnosed back in 2014. She talked about being bedridden with fatigue, flu-like symptoms, really struggled to get diagnosed initially, had to pause her whole career to focus on getting better, called it the worst period of her life. Justin Bieber, too. He revealed his diagnosis in 2020. He was also dealing with chronic mono at the same time, which complicated things. And he spoke out partly because people were making assumptions about his appearance, his health.
Right, he mentioned people thought he looked terrible, even speculated about drug use.
Yeah, he said people thought he looked like expletive on meth. He wanted to set the record straight, vowed he'd be back and better than ever.
And the list goes on. Bella Hadid, the model, shared her long recovery journey just last year in 2023. Amy Schumer, the comedian. Alexis Ohanian, the Reddit co-founder. They've all spoken about their struggles. So it really hits home that this is a widespread health challenge with pretty significant impacts.
Hearing all these different stories, Shania's voice issues, Avril's debilitating fatigue, Bieber's public battle, Timberlake's tour struggles, what sort of common theme emerges from these celebrity experiences? What does it tell us about maybe the hidden parts of Lyme?
That's a really good point. I think a key theme is the invisibility, often, of the illness and the fight for diagnosis. You have these incredibly high-functioning people suddenly dealing with symptoms that aren't always obvious to the outside world. The fatigue, the pain, the brain fog.
Really things you can't easily see.
Exactly. And because Lyme can mimic so many other things, they often face a long, frustrating journey just to figure out what's wrong. Then there's the impact on their careers, their identities, having to step back, modify how they work. It's a huge adjustment. It really highlights the profound personal toll, I think, beyond just the physical symptoms. That struggle often happens away from the cameras.
That makes a lot of sense. So given that tick-borne illnesses seem to be increasing, what does this all mean for you listening right now? What are the practical steps you can take?
Yeah, prevention is definitely key. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has some solid advice. First, when you're going outdoors, especially into woody or grassy areas, think about protection. Treat your clothes and gear like boots, tents with products containing 0.5% permethrin. It kills ticks. And use an EPA-registered insect repellent on your skin. Ones with DT are effective.
Okay, permethrin on clothes, DT on skin. Got it.
Then, after you come inside, the tick check is crucial. You need to do a thorough, full body check. Pay close attention to areas like under the arms, in and around the ears, inside the belly button, behind the knees.
Hairline too.
Definitely. In and around the hair, between the legs, around the waist. Ticks like hiding spots. Also, toss your clothes into a dryer on high heat for about 10 minutes. That heat can kill any ticks clinging to the fabric. And don't forget your pets. Check them over carefully, as they can bring ticks into the house.
Right, pets are prime targets. And, okay, say you do find a tick attached, what's the best way to get it off?
The key is to use fine-tipped tweezers. Grasp the tick as close to the skin's surface as possible, right near its head or mouth parts. Then, pull upward with steady, even pressure. Don't twist or jerk it. You don't want the mouth parts to break off in the skin.
Okay, steady upward pull, no twisting.
Exactly. Once it's out, clean the bite area thoroughly with rubbing alcohol or soap and water. And wash your hands too. Being informed about these steps really does empower you to protect yourself and your family.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive. We've covered Justin Timberlake's personal revelation, unpacked the complexities of Lyme disease. Hopefully you now have a much clearer picture of this challenging condition, which, as we've seen, affects so many people, famous or not.
It really does. And it makes you think, doesn't it? In this era where personal health information is shared more openly, especially by public figures, how does that transparency actually change things? How does it affect our understanding of these illnesses and maybe even how we perceive the people going through them?
That's a great question to ponder. We hope this deep dive has given you valuable knowledge and plenty to think about. Join us next time for another deep dive into the sources that matter to you.